Bueno, la CIM tiene una agenda enorme en el tema de democracia y de liderazgos. El primer ámbito tiene que ver con la gobernanza electoral, para que esta gobernanza electoral responda a las necesidades con las que fue creada, y es buscar los espacios de redistribución del poder. Después hay un programa interamericano sobre el liderazgo de las mujeres, donde generamos conocimiento y también tenemos cursos de capacitación. Hay un poderoso curso que ha llegado a más de 1000 mujeres con más de 15 ediciones, que es para candidatas electorales, en las cuales conversamos con ellas, pero también nos ponemos en una agenda de solidaridad y articulación y alianzas entre las mujeres, a pesar de las múltiples diferencias ideológicas o de partidos políticos. También hablamos de los temas de violencia política, porque no es lo mismo llegar que quedarse, y la violencia política es una forma de ejercicio de disciplinar a las mujeres para que vuelvan al mundo de lo privado y enfrentar la violencia, hacer buenas investigaciones, buenas leyes que permitan sancionar la violencia política. Es parte de las aspiraciones de la CIM en este programa de liderazgo de las mujeres. La aspiración histórica de las mujeres es estar en el mundo del público, que nuestro trabajo sea remunerado y que tenga un reconocimiento. COVID ha puesto en evidencia una profundización de las brechas existentes para el logro de este objetivo. Estas brechas existentes ahora dan cuenta de que podríamos tener un rezago de más de 2 décadas en el mundo laboral. Que el cierre de brechas, que se previó que podía tardar 100 años en cerrarse, ahora se habla de 135 años para cerrar la brecha entre los hombres y las mujeres. Entonces nuestro objetivo es que miren el derecho de las mujeres al empoderamiento económico, que el statement "quédate en casa", que es un viejo conocido del patriarcado, no sea que nos quedemos en casa siempre, y que entendamos que la inserción de la mitad de la población, de este talento humano que tiene una serie de ventajas competitivas, es necesario para el crecimiento económico. De manera que la CIM está colocando esta realidad, está colocando las necesidades de las mujeres y está haciendo unas recomendaciones de rutas para poder cumplir con el derecho al empoderamiento económico y con el crecimiento económico que requieren nuestras empobrecidas economías en tiempos de COVID.
Esta organización es el guardián regional en defensa de la democracia, la libertad y los derechos humanos. Los países se han comprometido con estos valores a través de instrumentos legales como la Carta Democrática Interamericana, la Convención Americana de Derechos Humanos y todas las demás convenciones interamericanas. Nuestro trabajo es mantener los más altos estándares. Debemos ser objetivos, analizar los hechos, denunciar cuando veamos corrupción, inequidad o amenazas a la libertad. En esos casos no podemos ser neutrales.
than 100 years since the inauguration of this building, the OAS headquarters, our institution still brings together the peoples of the Americas to address our responsibilities as a partnership of nations. As we look to the future, our work must also focus on the construction of a positive agenda that continues to favorably impact millions of lives every day.
The COVID-19 pandemic brought unprecedented challenges to all member states and the people we serve. In response, the OAS Secretariat for Integral Development adopted a three-pronged approach by 1. Adjusting our portfolio of existing projects, 2. Exploring new projects to meet emerging needs, and 3. Expanding multi-sectoral partnerships. The results achieved in 2020 demonstrate the resilience of our member states and the commitment of the OAS SETI to work with member states and partners towards our common goals in the development of our region. Our Network on Competitiveness launched the COVID-19 Ideas Accelerator, sharing 250 tools, health solutions, responses, and recovery plans. The Network for Labor Administration published a portfolio of responses from ministries of labor to COVID-19, sharing over 420 measures taken to protect workers, employment, and income. Likewise, The Inter-American Teacher Education Network series, Teaching STEM in Quarantine, provided 117,000 teachers with key tools to continue advancing STEM education during the pandemic. Through its network and platforms, the Inter-American Committee on Ports promoted international and national best practices, guidelines, protocols, and recommendations on COVID-19 safety measures and continuity of logistic operations. Initiatives such as the Education in Times of Change platform allowed us to meet urgent needs by offering timely tools on virtual education and a dedicated space for ministries to share strategies, actions, and solutions. Other programs such as the Row Fund stepped up, providing emergency grants to offset the challenges imposed on our students by the pandemic. SETI's partnerships are adding value to member states in the form of technical assistance, training, and access to tools and services. In partnership with leading private sector institutions, we offered micro, small, and medium enterprises access to online tools and training, increasing their visibility and participation in e-commerce, a key to their survival and growth in the pandemic and post-pandemic era. A new OAS SETI Facebook initiative provided 85,000 MSMEs across the region with capacity building opportunities and WhatsApp business tools to aid response, recovery, and resilience building. The Caribbean Small Business Development Centers program achieved real impact, supporting new businesses, expanding sales, and driving growth. A new network of Caribbean SBDCs will broaden the program's reach. The Inter-American Committee on Tourism, the C2, convened ministerial-level policy dialogue in an urgent response to the impact of the pandemic on the hard-hit tourism and hospitality sectors. Policymakers and experts discussed biosanitary protocols, travel and visa facilitation, among other critical areas for the sector's recovery. Partnering with the George Washington University and the U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs, we went ahead with the scheduled first Indigenous Tourism Forum of the Americas, pivoting to a virtual format and convening over 240 participants from indigenous communities, the private sector, and governments. SETI also integrated sustainable development practices in the COVID-19 response. The pandemic is a daily reminder of the links between water, health, sanitation, food security, and nutrition. We ensured the continuity of our water management projects in the Plata Basin and worked with governments and partners in the design of an investment portfolio valued at $90 million. Additionally, the Energy and Climate Partnership of the Americas continued to share relevant best practices and responses to the pandemic on energy and air quality. These few examples indicate our collective impact. We cannot do this alone. It is now more urgent than ever to address the region's structural weaknesses, to recover from the health, economic, and social crises occasioned by the pandemic and prepare for future shocks. It is imperative that we work together as we risk losing recent development gains and seeing millions fall back into poverty. It is time for the region to redirect course and pursue a more sustainable, resilient, and equitable future for all. We are in this together.
But the resilience building agenda is too big for any one stakeholder to address acting alone, and simply bringing together stakeholders, whether at the national, subnational, regional, or global level, is not enough. Effective, focused, and sustained coordination among stakeholders is paramount to provide countries with integrated and comprehensive support.
The OAS, as a hemispheric forum and honest broker, must continue to facilitate this process while we work with member states towards the attainment of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. Cooperation, collaboration, and partnerships that include all actors strengthen us, enabling us to be more than the sum of our parts. We can and we must work together. The future of our region depends on it.
Bueno, la CIM tiene una agenda enorme en el tema de democracia y de liderazgos. El primer ámbito tiene que ver con la gobernanza electoral, para que esta gobernanza electoral responda a las necesidades con las que fue creada, y es buscar los espacios de redistribución del poder. Después hay un programa interamericano sobre el liderazgo de las mujeres, donde generamos conocimiento y también tenemos cursos de capacitación. Hay un poderoso curso que ha llegado a más de 1000 mujeres con más de 15 ediciones, que es para candidatas electorales, en las cuales conversamos con ellas, pero también nos ponemos en una agenda de solidaridad y articulación y alianzas entre las mujeres, a pesar de las múltiples diferencias ideológicas o de partidos políticos. También hablamos de los temas de violencia política, porque no es lo mismo llegar que quedarse, y la violencia política es una forma de ejercicio de disciplinar a las mujeres para que vuelvan al mundo de lo privado y enfrentar la violencia, hacer buenas investigaciones, buenas leyes que permitan sancionar la violencia política. Es parte de las aspiraciones de la CIM en este programa de liderazgo de las mujeres. La aspiración histórica de las mujeres es estar en el mundo de lo público, que nuestro trabajo sea remunerado y que tenga un reconocimiento. COVID ha puesto en evidencia una profundización de las brechas existentes para el logro de este objetivo. Estas brechas existentes ahora dan cuenta de que podríamos tener un rezago de más de 2 décadas en el mundo laboral, que el cierre de brechas que se previó que podía tardar 100 años en cerrarse, ahora se habla de 135 años para cerrar la brecha entre los hombres y las mujeres. Entonces, nuestro objetivo es que miren el derecho de las mujeres al empoderamiento económico, que el statement "quédate en casa", que es un viejo conocido del patriarcado, no sea que nos quedemos en casa siempre, y que entendamos que la inserción de la mitad de la población, de este talento humano que tiene una serie de ventajas competitivas, es necesario para el crecimiento económico. De manera que la CIM está colocando esta realidad, está colocando las necesidades de las mujeres y está haciendo unas recomendaciones de rutas para poder cumplir con el derecho al empoderamiento económico y con el crecimiento económico que requieren nuestras empobrecidas economías en tiempos de COVID.
Hoy, esta organización es el guardián regional en defensa de la democracia, la libertad y los derechos humanos. Los países se han comprometido con estos valores a través de instrumentos legales como la Carta Democrática Interamericana, la Convención Americana de Derechos Humanos y todas las demás convenciones interamericanas. Nuestro trabajo es mantener los más altos estándares. Debemos ser objetivos, analizar los hechos, denunciar cuando veamos corrupción, inequidad o amenazas a la libertad. En esos casos no podemos ser neutrales.
100 years since the inauguration of this building, the OAS headquarters, our institution still brings together the peoples of the Americas to address our responsibilities as a partnership of nations. As we look to the future, our work must also focus on the construction of a positive agenda that continues to favorably impact millions of lives every day.
The COVID-19 pandemic brought unprecedented challenges to all member states and the people we serve. In response, the OAS Secretariat for Integral Development adopted a three-pronged approach by 1. Adjusting our portfolio of existing projects, 2. Exploring new projects to meet emerging needs, and 3. Expanding multi-sectoral partnerships. The results achieved in 2020 demonstrate the resilience of our member states and the commitment of the OAS SETI to work with member states and partners towards our common goals in the development of our region. Our Network on Competitiveness launched the COVID-19 Ideas Accelerator, sharing 250 tools, health solutions, responses, and recovery plans. The Network for Labor Administration published a portfolio of responses from ministries of labor to COVID-19, sharing over 420 measures taken to protect workers, employment, and income. Likewise, the Inter-American Teacher Education Network series, Teaching STEM in Quarantine, provided 117,000 teachers with key tools to continue advancing STEM education during the pandemic. Through its network and platforms, the Inter-American Committee on Ports promoted international and national best practices, guidelines, protocols, and recommendations on COVID-19 safety measures and continuity of logistic operations. Initiatives such as the Education in Times of Change platform allowed us to meet urgent needs by offering timely tools on virtual education and a dedicated space for ministries to share strategies, actions, and solutions. Other programs such as the Row Fund stepped up, providing emergency grants to offset the challenges imposed on our students by the pandemic. SETI's partnerships are adding value to member states in the form of technical assistance, training, and access to tools and services. In partnership with leading private sector institutions, we offered micro, small, and medium enterprises access to online tools and training, increasing their visibility and participation in e-commerce, a key to their survival and growth in the pandemic and post-pandemic era. A new OAS SETI Facebook initiative provided 85,000 MSMEs across the region with capacity building opportunities and WhatsApp business tools to aid response, recovery, and resilience building. The Caribbean Small Business Development Center's program achieved real impact, supporting new businesses, expanding sales, and driving growth. A new network of Caribbean SPDCs will broaden the program's reach. The Inter-American Committee on Tourism, the C2, convened ministerial-level policy dialogue in an urgent response to the impact of the pandemic on the hard-hit tourism and hospitality sectors. Policymakers and experts discussed biosanitary protocols, travel and visa facilitation, among other critical areas for the sector's recovery. Partnering with the George Washington University and the U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs, we went ahead with the scheduled first Indigenous Tourism Forum of the Americas, pivoting to a virtual format and convening over 240 participants from indigenous communities, the private sector, and governments. SEDI also integrated sustainable development practices in the COVID-19 response. The pandemic is a daily reminder of the links between water, health, sanitation, food security, and nutrition. We ensured the continuity of our water management projects in the Plata Basin and worked with governments and partners in the design of an investment portfolio valued at $90 million. Additionally, the Energy and Climate Partnership of the Americas continued to share relevant best practices and responses to the pandemic on energy and air quality. These few examples indicate our collective impact. We cannot do this alone. It is now more urgent than ever to address the region's structural weaknesses, to recover from the health, economic, and social crises occasioned by the pandemic and prepare for future shocks. It is imperative that we work together as we risk losing recent development gains and seeing millions fall back into poverty. It is time for the region to redirect course and pursue a more sustainable, resilient, and equitable future for all. We are in this together.
But the resilience building agenda is too big for any one stakeholder to address acting alone, and simply bringing together stakeholders, whether at the national, subnational, regional, or global level, is not enough. Effective, focused, and sustained coordination among stakeholders is paramount to provide countries with integrated and comprehensive support.
The OAS, as a hemispheric forum and honest broker, must continue to facilitate this process while we work with member states towards the attainment of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. Cooperation, collaboration, and partnerships that include all actors strengthen us, enabling us to be more than the sum of our parts. We can and we must work together. The future of our region depends on it.
Bueno, la CIM tiene una agenda enorme en el tema de democracia y de liderazgos. El primer ámbito tiene que ver con la gobernanza electoral, para que esta gobernanza electoral responda a las necesidades con las que fue creada, y es buscar los espacios de redistribución del poder. Después hay un programa interamericano sobre liderazgo de las mujeres, donde generamos conocimiento y también tenemos cursos de capacitación. Hay un poderoso curso que ha llegado a más de 1000 mujeres con más de 15 ediciones, que es para candidatas electorales, en las cuales conversamos con ellas, pero también nos ponemos en una agenda de solidaridad y articulación y alianzas entre las mujeres, a pesar de las múltiples diferencias ideológicas o de partidos políticos. También hablamos de los temas de violencia política, porque no es lo mismo llegar que quedarse, y la violencia política es una forma de ejercicio de disciplinar a las mujeres para que vuelvan al mundo de lo privado y enfrentar la violencia, hacer buenas investigaciones, buenas leyes que permitan sancionar la violencia política. Es parte de las aspiraciones de la CIM en este programa de liderazgo de las mujeres. La aspiración histórica de las mujeres es estar en el mundo de lo público, que nuestro trabajo sea remunerado y que tenga un reconocimiento. COVID ha puesto en evidencia una profundización de las brechas existentes para el logro de este objetivo. Estas brechas existentes ahora dan cuenta de que podríamos tener un rezago de más de 2 décadas en el mundo laboral. Que el cierre de brechas, que se previó que podía tardar 100 años en cerrarse, ahora se habla de 135 años para cerrar la brecha entre los hombres y las mujeres. Entonces, nuestro objetivo es que miren el derecho de las mujeres al empoderamiento económico, que el statement "quédate en casa", que es un viejo conocido del patriarcado, no sea que nos quedemos en casa siempre, y que entendamos que la inserción de la mitad de la población, de este talento humano que tiene una serie de ventajas competitivas, es necesario para el crecimiento económico. De manera que la CIM está colocando esta realidad, está colocando las necesidades de las mujeres y está haciendo unas recomendaciones de rutas para poder cumplir con el derecho al empoderamiento económico y con el crecimiento económico que requieren nuestras empobrecidas economías en tiempos de COVID.
Esta organización es el guardián regional en defensa de la democracia, la libertad y los derechos humanos. Los países se han comprometido con estos valores a través de instrumentos legales como la Carta Democrática Interamericana, la Convención Americana de Derechos Humanos y todas las demás convenciones interamericanas. Nuestro trabajo es mantener los más altos estándares. Debemos ser objetivos, analizar los hechos, denunciar cuando veamos corrupción, inequidad o amenazas a la libertad. En esos casos no podemos ser neutrales.
more than 100 years since the inauguration of this building, the OAS headquarters, our institution still brings together the peoples of the Americas to address our responsibilities as a partnership of nations. As we look to the future, our work must also focus on the construction of a positive agenda that continues to favorably impact millions of lives every day.
Antigua and Barbuda, Bahamas, Belize, Bolivia, Brazil, Canada, Chile, Colombia, Costa Rica, Dominica, Ecuador, El Salvador, the United States, Grenada, Guatemala, Guyana, Haiti, Honduras, Jamaica, Mexico, Nicaragua, Panama, Peru, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Lucia, Suriname, Trinidad and Tobago, Uruguay, and Venezuela. We confirm quorum, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, S.G. Mendes. Good afternoon, distinguished colleagues. Following verification of the quorum by the Secretariat, I am pleased to declare open the special meeting of the Permanent Council, which has been convened at the request of the Permanent Mission of Peru for the purpose of considering the ecological disaster that occurred in Peru as contained in the order of business document CP/OD-2361/22, which I hereby submit for the consideration of this council. There being no observations or concerns, we will proceed to adopt it without amendment. Esteemed colleagues, as you may be aware, on January 15th, Peru was hit by one of the worst natural disasters in recent history. More than 6,000 barrels of oil were spilled into the ocean, releasing some 1,100 tons of oil, which is 400 tons more than the international benchmark for what constitutes a major oil spill. This ecological incident now possesses a serious threat to the safety and well-being of the surrounding population and has placed undue burden on the national response capabilities of the country. According to official estimates, the area affected includes 1,400 hectares of sea and land, as well as more than 500 hectares of marine wildlife reserves in protected natural areas. The spill is currently affecting wildlife and the coastlines along 5 districts north of the spill, as currents push the oil northwards. Nearby communities are coping with the spill's impact on local wildlife and the natural resources, which is now adversely affecting their fishing livelihoods and tourism-related activities. The President of Peru has declared an environmental emergency as cleanup teams struggle to contain the impact of this ecological disaster. This emergency in Peru is a situation that affects us all. It is incumbent upon us to make an urgent appeal to the international community to stand in solidarity with the people and the government of Peru and provide the necessary assistance to mitigate and overcome the environmental, social, and humanitarian consequences produced by this disaster. Today, we will learn more about the impact of this disaster and ways in which we can support our sister country. With that said, I am pleased to offer the floor for a brief introduction to Ambassador Harold Forsyth, Permanent Representative of Peru to the OAS. Ambassador Forsyth, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for presiding over this special meeting and for allowing it to take place. We're very grateful. At the same time, I'd like to thank you for your words with respect to a very serious incident that took place in our country recently. We thank you very much, and we would like to greet through you the permanent representatives, alternate representatives, and the Assistant Secretary General. I am not an expert on these issues, but I think that's important for the organization to talk about the horrible magnitude of this incident so that we can all learn from this and so we can take action in the future. This is an ecological disaster that is very severe, and most of us have coastlines, so any of us could actually suffer these kinds of disasters. Therefore, I think this is important for our organization. Again, I am not an expert on these kinds of issues. Therefore, I have asked the President of the Board of Directors and General Manager of the Agency for Environmental Assessment and Enforcement of Peru, OEFA, Mrs. Miriam Alegría Ceballos, to talk about what has happened. If you will allow me, therefore, Chair, I would like to give the floor to Mrs. Miriam Alegría. Thank you very much.
Sir, I'm pleased to offer the floor to Mrs. Miriam Alegría, President of the Board of Directors and General Manager of the Agency for Environmental Assessment and Enforcement for Peru. Madam President, welcome to the OAS Permanent Council. The floor is yours.
Mrs. Alegría, we cannot see you, madam. I think the camera is not working properly, says the technician. We can now see you, madam. Thank you very much. Good afternoon to the Chair of the Permanent Council, Assistant Secretary General, representatives of the member states. I am Miriam Alegría Ceballos. I am the general manager of the Agency for Environmental Assessment and Enforcement of Peru, OEFA. We fall under the Ministry of the Environment, and so in the framework of our functions, we learned about this incident, and therefore we have intervened. We have a very brief presentation, and I'd like to share it with you. Next slide, please. Next. Thank you very much. As I was reporting before, Chair, representatives of the member states, this incident was learned about by my organization 15 January at 2200 hours, or 2226, when the Pampilla refinery, which belongs to Repsol, informed us that there had been an oil spill, which they said was 0.16 barrels, and that this had affected 2.5 square meters in the sea. And the company also told us that they had activated their contingency plan. This is a plan that the company has to address these kinds of events, and based thereon, that they had taken contingency measures to contain the spill. However, what we saw the next day when we went to investigate is that this situation was not what had been reported, that the currents had taken the oil and covered many beaches. So this oil spill took place in terminal number 2 in the Pampilla refinery, and this is where we have onloading and offloading of oil, and it's about 25 kilometers north of Lima, which is our capital, the capital of Peru. Next slide, please. What you can see here on this map, which shows us where the spill occurred. As I was saying, because of the sea currents and the marine currents that exist on the coast from south to north, this spill spread, and it affected more than 35 beaches along 60 kilometers of the coast. And these are the areas that were affected by the spill. So that's 11,637 hectares that were affected by this spill. At this same zone, or in the same zone, we have different protected areas, Islote, the Guanera area, and so this had an impact as well on artisanal fishing and of course on tourism, because these are protected beaches where tourists go. To date, we have 4 provinces which have been impacted by the spill, 35 beaches, as I already stated. So we're talking about the province of Lima, Callao, Ural, and Huacho. And so this has affected these areas. There have been contingency measures taken to try to clean up this spill. OEFA pressured the company so that they took measures in the framework of their contingency plan, obviously. Now, as I was stating, to date, the level of the state, we have deployed different measures so that the company can undertake activities to do cleanup, to recover the oil. We're also at the same time evaluating the environmental damage so that we can really see what areas have been effective and what degree or to what extent they have been affected. As I pointed out previously, Chair and representatives, we have taken measures to fully identify the areas affected, how to clean it up, how to contain it, how to recover it, and also how to rescue the different species in these protected areas. At the same time, we have executed different activities in coordination with, for example, confederations of fishermen. They, of course, were severely impacted by this. They've had to stop their activities. Also, other people who live in those areas have been affected. Of course, this has been very detrimental for them. At this time, we continue to execute these measures and activities. We are investigating who is liable, but at this time, there is still cleanup and contention of oil going on, and I will be showing you images that will make it very clear what the magnitude of this incident has been. And I have a video, if you could please turn it on. Thank you. The UEFA supervises, as of Sunday, 16 January, the oil spill in Ventanilla. UEFA has been doing environmental evaluations to determine the real impact of the oil spill. This is Ms. Alegria speaking. It says the ministry announces measures to be taken to clean up the oil spill. Again, I believe the interpreter said that it has ended. That's the report we have. If you have any questions, of course, I would love to answer those. Thank you very much, Assistant Secretary General, Chair, representatives of member states. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Madam President, for your most informative presentation. Esteemed colleagues, we will now proceed to the consideration of the draft declaration titled Oil Spills in the Sea of Ventanilla and Solidarity with the People and the Government of Peru, as contained in document CP/DOC 5757/22. Said draft declaration is co-sponsored by the delegations of Antigua and Barbuda, Argentina, Belize, Brazil, Bolivia, Canada, Chile, Colombia, Costa Rica, Ecuador, El Salvador, Mexico, Panama, Paraguay, United States, Uruguay, and Venezuela. I offer the floor at this time to the permanent representative of Peru, who will present this draft declaration. Ambassador Forsyth, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you once again, Chair. I'm very grateful to you for your patience. I thank you for having mentioned the co-sponsorship of other delegations which have led to this declaration. Well, this declaration, what its use is to show the interest of the organization with respect to an ecological disaster that a member state has suffered, but also that this can allow us to learn from this lesson and be better prepared for the future. Chair, I learned that most member states, through their distinguished permanent representatives, well, it was so wonderful that they came and collaborated and co-sponsored this. I know we have 34 members, and sometimes there is divisiveness, but I think we're on the same page here, and I thank all of them through you, Chair, on behalf of the people and the government of Peru, and on my own behalf. Thank you so very much, Chair.
Thank you, Ambassador Forsyth. I now ask delegations if the Permanent Council may adopt this draft resolution as submitted by the delegation of Peru. And I believe the delegation of Chile, Ambassador Court, will propose that draft declaration.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, through you, we would like to thank Peru for the presentation. We are completely supportive of this declaration, and we have co-sponsored it, and we wanted to propose that this be approved by acclamation, and that way the OAS can show its solidarity with our brother nation, Peru. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. The draft declaration, Oil Spills in the Sea of Ventanilla, and the solidarity with the people of the government of Peru, contained in document CP/Doc 5757/22, has been approved. I pause for a brief minute. I see that there's a request coming in. I guess this will be handled sequentially. I invite delegations at this, the draft declaration has been approved by acclamation. I now invite delegations to speak on the declaration we have just approved. And I see that we now have first Argentina. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just want to reiterate Argentina's support for this declaration. We have a coastline. We have also many wildlife reserves, and we are committed to using technology, for example, to take advantage of our natural resources, but we know that we need to be very careful. And again, we just reiterate our support for Peru. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now proceed to hearing from the Ambassador for Ecuador. You have the floor, sir.
Señor presidente, agradezco la presentación.
Chair, I'd like to thank Miriam Alegría, the President of Board of Directors and General Manager of the Agency for Environmental Assessment and Enforcement of Peru, for her presentation about the ecological disaster due to the oil spill in the Sea of Antonia. And so now, as the pro tempore presidency or president of the Andean region countries, well, we want to express our solidarity with Peru. This oil spill has caused great damage to protected areas, and I would like to ask the multilateral organizations to provide the necessary assistance to mitigate and overcome this disaster, which can affect people's health as well as the environment. On behalf of my government and my people, you can be sure that we will provide as much help as possible to be able to protect the health of our environment and our people, and we offer help to Peru. Thus, we supported and we co-sponsored this draft declaration that was presented at the behest of Peru. Thank you very much.
Thank the Ambassador for Argentina for that comment. I'd next like to turn to Grenada. You have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to pledge the support for government and people of Grenada, to the government and people of Peru, and if it is not too late, we'd like to be a co-sponsor of that declaration, and also we'd like to thank Ms. Alegría for the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Next, we have the Ambassador for Mexico. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We want to begin by asking where the Secretary General is. Why is he missing from a Permanent Council meeting about an incident that is seriously affecting a country? And so we have to ask about the Secretary General's priorities. And I really think he needs to be more pragmatic about what his priorities are. We have paid close attention to the presentation made by Mrs. Miriam Alegría Ceballos from UEFA, where she described the ecological disaster caused by the oil spill that took place on 15 January off the shore of Peru. In the context of a situation in which we see that different measures need to be taken to protect the environment and stop climate change, these incidents, or these kinds of incidents, make us as states realize that we need to have very strong regulations and frameworks to be able to address situations like the ones we heard about today. And it also reminds us that transnational companies need to carry out their activities in keeping with the law and regulations, and always respecting the environment and the rights of indigenous peoples and peoples in the areas where they work, as they may be affected by these companies' negligence. They need to take care of the environment, and they need to follow the law like they do in their own countries, especially when they are putting people's lives at risk. In this respect, my delegation would like to recall Article 7 and Article 36 of the Binding Charter on Transnational Companies provides that they are subject to the laws of the jurisdictions where they operate, and that international treaties and conventions affect them, and that they also must be in line with the development policies of the countries where they are operating. According to the social responsibility of businesses, which was a document approved at the OAS, there are different provisions that refer to the rights of peoples affected by incidents brought about by transnational companies, and that these companies must respect their rights. And this includes businesses that are national and businesses that are transnational. And so these companies must have different practices internally that are in keeping with human rights as well as environmental rights. Furthermore, the reports on businesses and human rights of the IACHR and its rapporteurship, DESCA, states that member states should have mechanisms to be able to investigate businesses that may be violating human rights, and that member states that see their citizens' rights being trampled on by companies can go forward and demand reparations from these companies, and that there could be administrative or criminal responsibility. We want to express our solidarity with the people and government of Peru, and we are, of course, co-sponsoring this because we believe that this is an important declaration, and it's important to show our solidarity. Thank you very much, Chair.
Very much. I'd like to hand the floor over next to Panama. You have the floor.
Gracias, señor.
Thank you very much, Chair. I take the floor on behalf of the Central American Integration System, SICA, Belize, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Panama, and the Dominican Republic. I speak on behalf of all these countries to express our deep solidarity with the people and the government of Peru in the face of this ecological disaster of such great proportions, which has affected human beings in the marine life in the Sea of Ventanilla, and has incalculable effects. We express our solidarity to the government of Peru because of the oil spill and the declaration adopted now by the OAS. This area of the Pacific Ocean is not only important when it comes to marine life, but it's a means of subsistence for hundreds of families who practice artisanal fishing. The members of SICA understand the urgent need to protect and restore the health of our oceans. Catastrophes such as that in the Sea of Ventanilla in Peru pose a challenge to sustainable use of the oceans, and also we reiterate that real measures have to be taken to deal with the impact of climate change, which has caused many different disasters, such as the one that concerns us here. So different states, international organizations, and financial civil society, private enterprise, we must protect and emphasize prevention to help to avoid, to the extent possibly, these events that unfortunately has happened to the people in government of Peru. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Ambassador. Next, we have Ambassador Young from Belize. You have the floor, sir.
Chairman, I'm sorry, I think the orders is Colombia.
Colombia, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So, Chair, in addition to what Ambassador Rockebord said, from SICA, Belize is also very happy to be a co-sponsor of this declaration. Like many of our neighbors, Belize relies very heavily on its marine resources, as well as the touristic draw of our barrier reef, the second longest in the world. We fully understand the devastating effect of this ecological disaster, and we very much sympathize with the people of Peru. In addition to expressing our distress at the serious consequences of this disaster, this declaration calls for an urgent evaluation and investigation of the incident and efforts to ensure that those found responsible for the incident comply with remedying the damage caused. This is important to all of us, of course, and especially those of us with significant exposure to similar events occurring in our waters. So there must be a full and transparent investigation so steps can be taken to prevent these types of incidents from happening again. In addition, the responsible parties must be held accountable and firm action taken to provide deterrence. So, Chair, we are very pleased that this organization has adopted this declaration. I thank you.
Thank you, sir. Colombia.
Thank you, Chair. Colombia has taken the floor to speak on behalf of the Aladi countries without prejudice of those to the remarks of other countries that have spoken and will speak afterwards. We now express our total solidarity with the people and government of Peru because of what happened on the 15th of January in the Sea of Ventanilla in the province of Callao. We also express our concern for the serious environmental, economic, and social and health consequences that this oil spill has caused and continues to cause to the populations that are directly affected. We express the compelling need for them to receive aid, and we back, lastly, the efforts of the government of Peru to ensure that those responsible for the incident comply with remedying the damage. And we call on the international development and financial institutions to provide all support possible to mitigate the damage that has been caused. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, sir. Next, we have the Ambassador Abdallah. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Firstly, I'd like for my country to express its respect and its feeling. I don't want to use the word solidarity because it goes beyond the word solidarity. I believe that it's a word more like having to do with full identification with the position of Peru right now vis-a-vis, let's call it what it is. I wouldn't call it a catastrophe, but it's a tragedy as well, basically because at the hands of human beings, a catastrophe usually it can often be linked to non-human action, but in this case, an environmental catastrophe in this case is attributable to an human action, and that is far under the law that is in place in this area. I think we can see that there is liability of human beings. We don't know if it's a lack of expertise, a lack of if there was anything concealed. We don't know exactly where and what level, but it's very clear that there must be an investigation. We have to look at all these possibilities, and also remember, in the international sphere, not only must we speak of these things, we have to focus our actions so that we can back Peru's action in this regard. This is the first time that we see, it's not the first time we see tragedies of this type. It's Peru's turn this time, but it'll be other countries' turns, and it has been, but this is something that's going to happen in our continent. And so, and the theory of unity and if you're unique and fear, and not to look at differences and the nuances of our differences and everything. We have to look at our nature with our living seas. We must remember what we're entitled to, that our seas must not be assaulted by any human action, undermined and fouled, because we must be able to share them. So we must discredit any type of action in this regard, and so we cannot just remain with just words. We must stop at words, but we all must be. We want to go beyond the words. We want to go beyond words with regard to Peru supporting it in the international field, in its national territory, and in the territory of prevention, and to try to deter and prevent these types of incidents. That's what this is about. This is ex post. We've had the tragedy. We must now act. There must be action, and liability has to be determined, and we have to get to the bottom of the facts. The scene of the crime is there, unfortunately. Perhaps we can take as unity, as a continent, as one hemisphere, we can learn a lesson all together so that these type of things don't happen again to us. The main factor, the heart of the thoughts the thinking we must engage in with Peru, behind Peru, supporting Peru, because we're all Peru, because this could happen to any and all of us. Generating mechanisms of protection and prevention is what we must do. This is the way forward. And just simply stated, I've been passionate in my remarks, because if it happened in my country, it would really hurt. We have a lot of riverine areas, and in the Rio Plate, for example, area, mad. And rightly, as our Peruvian colleagues should be as well. So we'd like to embrace you, and that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Della, next we have the representative for Paraguay. You have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. delegation of Paragram joins into this exhortation to all actors involved to collaborate in with regard to this fortunate event that happened on January 15th, 2022, with this oil spill in the Sea of Ventanilla in our sister Republic of Peru, and in a spirit of solidarity, both as a member of the regional group and in part of the international community. And we support the declaration, oil spills in the Sea of Ventanilla, and solidarity with the people and government of Peru. The OAS, through the Secretary General, can convey this declaration to other international bodies, because we're talking about an ecological problem in our hemisphere that affects everyone. And so therefore, I wanted to ask whether we could have the presentation of Ms. Miriam Alegria Ceballos, a copy of her to be from the OEFA, the Agency for Environmental Assessment and Enforcement of Peru. It was a very detailed, excellent presentation. We'd like to provide it to our capitals. Thank you very much.
Paraguay. Next, we have St. Lucia. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. My delegation thanks the delegation of Peru for the presentation, and we are pleased that the declaration was adopted by acclamation. St. Lucia expresses solidarity with the government and people of Peru as they work to address this environmental emergency. The effects of the oil spill on the lives and livelihoods of the people of Peru, as well as the ecological impact, is unfathomable. St. Lucia supports the efforts of the government of Peru to evaluate and investigate this incident, as well as support the appeal for humanitarian aid to adequately address this matter. Chair, my delegation is thankful for the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to make a slight adjustment in the ordinal ranking here. I think the next person would be Canada. We're asking the observers to afford the opportunity for the delegates, members of the OAS, to go first. So next we have the representative for Canada.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Quelques mots.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to thank Ms. Alegria for her presentation, and also the delegation of Peru for submitting this draft declaration that was approved. Canada supports this declaration and wants to offer its solidarity to Peru because of this environmental disaster. We are distressed about this oil spill and its effects. Peru is a country that is seeking to be responsible with regard to protecting its environment, and we know they're doing everything possible to recover from this. We believe that we need to do this in an ongoing manner. We understand that there are communities that have been affected by this tragedy. Through our embassy in Lima, we are working with local agencies and people to be able to assist in the areas that have been affected. Thank you very much, Chair.
Very much. We'd like now to move Bolivia up one rank. Bolivia, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Bolivia joins in as a sponsor to solidarity and friendship that has been expressed towards the Peru with regard to the events that took place in the Sea of Antilla, as well as the Andean community has done. We hope that those responsible for this tragedy are fully identified and liability is assigned to those who are responsible. Bolivia expresses its solidarity and especially calls on the international community to think about the humble people of the fishermen's village who are affected by the oil spill and have felt the full impact of this ecological catastrophe. Bolivia, Chairman, also remembers the responsibility, or calls the responsibility of transnational companies' office. Often they are quite ingenuous when it comes time to do everything they should to prevent this. Bolivia hopes that Peru conducts a firm, responsible investigation so that this type of situation doesn't happen again. Our solidarity, our hug, our embrace to the Republic of Peru. Approximately 200 years ago, we were a single nation. And so it is an honor to co-sponsor this resolution. Thank you very much, Chair.
Most welcome, sir. And next, we'd like to have the representative for the USA. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The United States wishes to express its condolences to and its solidarity with the Peruvian government and people regarding this ecological disaster. It is vital that we come together as a hemisphere on this occasion and that proper steps continue to be taken to address the situation along the Peruvian coast. It is our shared goal to protect and preserve the environment. The United States government has been pleased to support the response taking place in Peru and will remain steadfast in doing so. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir. Next, we'd like to hear from Ambassador Sanders, Antigua and Barbuda. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, as you know, my delegation co-sponsored this declaration. Let me explain that we did so because of our deep concern about the ecological damage that occurred in Peru resulting from the oil spill from an offshore refinery. We are especially concerned about the impact on the lives and livelihoods of the inhabitants of the area, hundreds of fishermen, the birds, and plankton. We are also troubled that the Peruvian economy, especially its tourist industry, has been severely impacted since beaches have been damaged and are now not usable. There, but for fortune, Mr. Chairman, goes my country or yours. All of this points to the need for a more comprehensive international legal framework for dealing with liability from oil spills and ecological damage. It also calls for more definitive agreements between oil companies and individual states for dealing effectively with who has responsibility and obligations for ecological disasters of this kind. As we are all aware, Mr. Chairman, negotiations between small countries and very large multinational corporations have produced unequal contractual arrangements and even inadequate legislation in individual states. But responsibilities and obligations for remedying these situations must be more clearly defined and detailed in the future. And perhaps organizations such as this one, the Organization of American States, should be equipped to provide the technical assistance to strengthen the negotiating capacity of smaller states when they have to deal with large multinational corporations. The inequality of that relationship needs to be rectified with institutional support. Now, Mr. Chairman, we recognize that many countries, especially small states, lack the financial and technical capacity to repair the considerable damage resulting from oil spills and other disasters. We ourselves, your country and mine, have been victims of disasters caused by external circumstances in which we have had to pay for the compensation, even though the damage has been caused by others. We do so even now in the context of climate change. In this connection, my delegation urges the international and regional financial and development institutions to provide assistance urgently needed by Peru. At the same time, we also acknowledge that over and above the legal obligations and responsibilities between the owners and operations of the refinery and the government of Peru, a moral responsibility falls to the owners and operators of that refinery and their tankers to help urgently to remedy this situation to its fullest. We are aware that when a similar incident occurred in Peru in 2013, involving the same owners and operators, there was a less than adequate response. That, Mr. Chairman, should not happen again. We therefore welcome an investigation of this incident with the support of the international community, and we stand in solidarity with the government of Peru in the expectation that whoever is found responsible for this oil spill will be held to account for full reparation. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Saron. I appreciate that a great deal. Next, we have the representative, the observer representative from France. You have the floor.
Chair, Assistant Secretary General, my delegation wanted to express its solidarity with the government and people of Peru who have been hit by this ecological disaster. France has also known these catastrophes and understands the suffering. My country has immediately responded when the international community in Peru called upon us by sending 2 experts from the European Union Civil Engineer Mechanism. They are specialists in urgent plans and in oil spills, and they are working on helping Peru recover from this damage. Chair, in the framework of France's presidency of the European Union and with the support of the UN, we are planning a high-level conference, the Ocean Summit, which has to do with every facet of the ocean. President Macron, who knows what's going on in Peru, when he made his key speech, talked about the challenges that we see in the oceans. And Antigua and Barbuda reminds us that we must take measures to prevent pollution and incidents like the ones we've seen in Peru, and which has affected other countries sometimes. My country has also been affected by this kind of ecological tragedy, which is a human tragedy. And so world actors have come together, American actors, civil society, to work together to provide a multilateral concrete response to the challenge that we just see. The declaration that was approved today unanimously shows that we are all concerned, that we are all in the same boat, that we must act together to protect the oceans that we all share. Thank you very much, Chair.
You're most welcome. Next, we hear from the representative for the Holy See. You have the floor.
Señor Presidente, Secretario.
Chair, Assistant Secretary General, the delegation of the Holy See thanks you for convening this special meeting of the Permanent Council to consider the ecological disaster that occurred in Peru. First of all, we wanted to convey the solidarity of Pope Francis to the people and government of Peru, to those who were directly affected, those who live on the coast, the fishermen, because of this terrible ecological damage that is due to the oil spill. Pope Francis, in his encyclical and his different messages and interventions, has appealed to protect our common home, especially our oceans, which not only have most of the water on the planet, but also have living beings, many of them unknown to us still, and threatened because of many different causes. Marine life also feeds many of the people in the world. Given this ecological disaster, the Church, through its local communities and organizations in Peru, such as Caritas Lima and Resucita Peru Ahora, and which is supported by Peruvian bishops, has put forward different projects to help those who have been affected by this oil spill in these difficult moments. Thus, the Church, once again, not only seeks to remind everyone of their duty to protect the environment, but also of their duty to protect human beings from other human beings sometimes. So the Holy See is happy to see the OAS reacting and making civil society and governments aware of the incidents that are affecting nature. Also to promote mechanisms in order to promote our duty to preserve natural resources and the environment of each country, to take care of the creations of God is the responsibility of everyone. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Next, we have the representative for Spain. You have the floor.
Good afternoon. I wanted to intervene at this Permanent Council and convey a message of solidarity with Peru because of this terrible accident. We had been there in 2002, 20 years again. Spain, Galicia suffered an oil spill because a tanker went down. Unfortunately, the oil spill led to the worst oil spills ever seen in the world. So we feel full empathy with Peruvians, and we want to reiterate that we want to cooperate to help Peru in this disaster and also create projects that will continue in the future. Now, for Spain, defending the environment is a priority, both in our country as well as abroad. Therefore, Peru will always find us standing with it to be able to address the adverse consequences of this accident. Based on our experience, we have extracted some lessons learned. We believe that now the important thing is to act on the ground to help the ecosystems recover and also help mitigate the socioeconomic consequences of the incidents, putting people in the center, leaving no one behind. The priority now is to take urgent measures while agencies work to determine potential responsibility and liability. We are in ongoing contact with Peruvian officials and the company Repsol to share our experience in managing these kinds of disasters, both in the cleanup phase as well as in the restoration phase that comes later. I have firsthand been able to talk to Ambassador Forsyth, we thank him for mentioning our support. Also, our Secretary of State for the Iberian states and the Caribbean has gone to Peru now to find out what's going on, and also so that everyone knows Spain is part of the solution. He has been with government officials, mayors, people who have been affected. Our Minister for the Ecological Transition and her team has been in contact with her counterparts in Peru and offering help. We know that cleanup activities are very complex, but we are thrilled to see that they're going down the right path, that authorities in Peru are doing everything possible, just like Repsol is doing as a responsible company that has capacity, that everything's being done to remediate the consequences of the disaster, both at an ecological and socioeconomic level. Finally, I want to make an appeal to not lose sight of the objective that we all share, which is the protection of the environment and the support of the communities that are affected. And also do not spread any kind of misinformation which would not help us reach this goal. We want to be rowing in the same direction so that the most serious consequences of this disaster can be overcome in the near future. We regret this terrible accident, and we want Peru to know that they have all the solidarity of the government of Spain. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the representative from Spain. And the last of the observers is Simon De Santi, Italia. You have the floor, please.
Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Chair, Assistant Secretary General, ambassadors, observers. I'd like to join with the expressions of solidarity to Peru. This is a terrible ecological disaster that has hit Peru. Italy also, like Peru, well, the protection of the environment is a priority. This incident has also been in the news and affected our public opinion. We stand with Peru in this difficult moment. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I'd like next to turn to S.G. Mendes for the closing comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
I have taken the floor on behalf of Secretary General Luis Almagro, who was not able to be with us this afternoon. The Secretary General had already expressed his solidarity with Peru, and the fact that he was not able to be here this afternoon, that he would be available at any other time. And this is the message that he has provided. We want to express our solidarity with the people and government of Peru for what happened on 15 January past. Also, we particularly want to send our thoughts to those who have been affected by this ecological disaster. In addition to affecting the marine flora and fauna, it is estimated that close to 10% of the oil sunk to the seabed, which is a danger for the biota. Also, experts believe that this oil spill could also exacerbate ocean acidification, and that these areas could potentially become emitters of GHG. In other words, greenhouse gases. The oil spill is not just a threat to public health, but it also affects different activities like artisanal fishing, whose catches supply restaurants and markets. And there's also an impact on local tourism because of the polluted beaches. We recognize the multidimensional impact of these incidents and its consequences for the affected communities, the loss of employment and income for thousands of families. We also know that the environmental impact has affected 2 million square meters of beaches and protected areas. The Guaneras Natural Wildlife Reserve and the Ancon Wildlife Reserve. This may be the worst ecological disaster in the recent history of Peru. We reiterate our solidarity with the Peruvian people. We want them to know that the General Secretariat will continue to collaborate to have policies that safeguard our natural resources that are abundant in our hemisphere and in taking measures to prevent this kind of disasters. We will continue to support the efforts of the government of Peru to reduce the net emissions of CO2 and implement actions for mitigation and adaptation and protection of ecosystems. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Mendes. We would like to thank all of the presenters for sharing their thoughts with respect to the disaster that has occurred. It appears that we have one more. That is from Peru itself. We'll just revert to them in a second. But I'd like to certainly thank all of the delegates for offering their comments. But before closing out, I'd like to offer the floor to Ambassador Forsyth of Peru.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just to say once again, I am overwhelmed by the kind words of all the permanent representatives and observers who have spoken. And this really drives home that the organization and Peru have common goals. Thank you so much, Chair. I appreciate your words. I forgot to mention the last time I spoke that the Secretary General called me yesterday and told me that he could not, unfortunately, be here at this time, at this special meeting. But yesterday he told me and expressed to me his solidarity and said that he supported the draft declaration. So thank you once again, Chair, on behalf of the people and government of Peru.
Thank you again, Ambassador Forsyth. It appears that we have no other delegates who express a will to present. So we have now concluded this order of business for this special meeting. I thank all of you for your participation. The meeting is adjourned.